Now, as we know, Boris Johnson, the Brexiteer who has promised to lead Britain out of the EU with or without a deal by the end of October, will replace Theresa May as Prime Minister tomorrow London time. Johnson, the face of the 2016 Brexit referendum, won the leadership of the Conservative Party with 92,000 votes, almost twice as many as his rival, Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. His convincing victory catapults the UK towards a showdown with the European Union and towards a constitutional crisis at home, as British MPs have vowed to bring down any government that tries to leave the bloc without a divorce deal. With his reaction, I was joined earlier this morning by our UK correspondent, Stuart Hughes, and I wished him good morning.
Good morning, Kerre.
So it was inevitable that Boris Johnson would become the leader of Britain. Are the British people prepared for him?
I think we were resigned, prepared and resigned. I think it was quite clear for quite some time that the result that came around lunchtime today would be as we expected, that Boris Johnson would become the Conservative leader. Not quite the new Prime Minister yet. That'll happen tomorrow UK time, when Theresa May officially hands over the keys of 10 Downing Street after submitting her official resignation to the Queen. The Queen, quite used to this sort of formality. Theresa May will be the unlucky 13th Prime Minister that the Queen has waved goodbye to. But we do now know that the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, no surprise, will be Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson. The result of a ballot of about 160,000 Conservative Party members, I would add more than half of those members over the age of 55, came at lunchtime UK time today, and the result, Boris Johnson got just over 66%, over 92,000 votes, compared with the 46-odd thousand who voted for Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt. I've got to say, Jeremy Hunt had clearly accepted defeat some time ago and took it in good grace when it came. Moments after the result was announced, Boris Johnson gave a typically enthusiastic and barnstorming, if I've got to say not particularly well-prepared speech, in which he promised he would deliver Brexit, unite the country and defeat the Labour leader, Jeremy Corbyn. He said, we're going to get Brexit done on October the 31st and take advantage of all the opportunities it will bring with a new spirit of can-do. And slipping into his traditional rhetoric, he said, like some slumbering giant, we are going to rise and ping off the guy ropes of self-doubt and negativity. So a day of high political theatre and a day tomorrow UK time of high political theatre again, as Boris Johnson walks through those famous black gates of 10 Downing Street for the first time as Prime Minister, a job he's been craving for the whole of his adult life. But it's then that the real work is going to begin, delivering Brexit. And that's a task that eluded his predecessor, Theresa May, for 3 years and eventually brought about her downfall.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you would dismiss him as a fool at your peril. I mean, he does have a public image of being this kind of blustery, hail fellow, well-met kind of a chap. But he's a very clever man from a sophisticated family.
He is. He is an old Etonian. He's had an excellent education. Reading his biography, as I did some time ago, he was certainly very bright, if not particularly applied to his studies. And the question now is, can he use that intelligence? Can he use that charisma to succeed where his predecessor failed? Because there's no doubt Boris Johnson is taking office at one of the critical moments in recent British political history. He's got little more than 3 months to manage Britain's exit from the European Union. I don't know about you. It takes me that long to change my internet service provider or change my mobile phone provider, let alone take my country out of a 50-year union with Europe. So the question now is he the man who can do it? As we've said, he doesn't lack charisma, but will that be enough when it gets down to the hard talking with Brussels? And it's there that some fear that he may falter. He's known for making swerves in policy. He's known for having a lack of attention to detail and on occasions making contradictory statements. And these are potentially not positive qualities when you're trying to chart a course for the future of this country.
I wonder, though, if he does appeal to the Brexiteers, because he reminds me a little bit of Sebastian Flight from Brideshead Revisited, plainer older brother, and he harks back to an old Britain where you were cultured and educated, but you never took it terribly seriously and you were kind of foppish and everything was a bit of a hoot.
There will be something of a wake-up call. There has been today, and it will certainly continue once people get used to the idea of Boris Johnson being Prime Minister. This good fellow, well-met shtick has served him very well when he was Mayor of London, when he was Foreign Secretary. But now he's got the most important political office in the country. And the hard facts that brought down Theresa May haven't changed. There are deep divisions on Brexit amongst the Conservative Party in Parliament. There is implacable opposition from other parties. European Union officials are insisting they'll make no major concessions to the deal that's already been negotiated. And yet Mr. Johnson is vowing to take Britain out of the European Union by the 31st of October, do or die. We know Boris in Britain, and many people around the world know Boris. Well, he's probably the most recognisable political figure since Margaret Thatcher. Will that be enough when he gets down to the hard business of trying to get Britain out of the European Union, when charisma and personality isn't enough? Will he dial down the rhetoric and become slightly more pragmatic once the chains of office are finally around his shoulders? That's what we'll be waiting to see in the days and weeks ahead.
And just finally, Stuart, is it going to reboot Britain's relationship with international countries like, and international leaders like Donald Trump in the US?
I think we will see, as we did when Donald Trump became president, that there is a sharp intake of breath amongst capitals around the world. And then politicians and civil servants realise that they have to get down to business and deal with the person they've got. And notably, Donald Trump was amongst the first to offer his congratulations to Boris Johnson, tweeting just moments after the result was announced. And this evening he's been saying that a really good man is going to be the Prime Minister of the UK now. He says Mr. Johnson's going to get it done, referring to Brexit. Donald Trump said, they call him the British Trump. That's a good thing. Respond to that as you wish. Of course, a lot of the attention now is on Brussels and how EU leaders are going to respond to Mr. Johnson's elevation to Prime Minister. At the moment, the response has been relatively positive. EU's Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier says he's looking forward to working with Mr. Johnson to achieve an orderly Brexit. I think the response has been positive, if for no other reason that at least it offers a clean break from the Theresa May era. It offers an opportunity to break the deadlock, the paralysis. An opportunity, I would say. There's no guarantee that's going to happen. Theresa May spent so long yo-yoing back and forth between Brussels and London trying to find a deal she could sell to the British Parliament and the British people. But make no mistake, EU leaders aren't signalling their willingness to accept whatever this new Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, might demand in terms of changes to the Brexit deal that they spent so long negotiating over, and that's the key issue. What's Boris Johnson going to be able to do to get the Brexit deal over the line that his predecessor spent 3 years trying to do and ultimately couldn't?